Hello there, good evening. I had an email or a couple of emails earlier today from a very kind correspondent. That's something I've been saying a few times recently. A correspondent who shared with me their thoughts that really quite shocked me. I think there's a good chance that they've made a connection. I mean, I hadn't seen it or thought about it even. It's a bit difficult to be forthright in this video because of reasons which you'll begin to infer as I go on. Lucy Letby takes out a grievance. It's there's an apology letter agreed to be written and signed by the Gang of Seven. The Gang of Seven. Among that Gang of Seven are two anonymous doctors. Dr. B, who becomes Dr. V in Thirlwall, so Dr. B in the trial becomes Dr. V in Thirlwall. And there's a Dr. ZA in Thirlwall. I'm not aware, I haven't done an exhaustive search, but I'm not aware of a Dr. ZA in the trial. There may be. It's a 10-month trial. I'm not aware of one. Perhaps other people are. I'm not aware of a Dr. ZA in the trial. What else has Dr. ZA done? What else is she known for? Thank you. This is all wholly due to, the reason I'm making this video is wholly due to the email sent to me by my kind correspondent today. What is Dr. ZA? What do we know about Dr. ZA? Well, we know it's a female doctor. She was on maternity leave. She was instrumental, or seemingly she was the pivotal point of actually discovering, quote unquote, discovering what become the smoking gun cases. We hear that Dr. ZA is on maternity leave, and in 2017, she has a flash in her mind, remembering back to 2015 in the case of baby F, and that blood test result showing to use Dr. Taylor's term, stupidly high insulin level, an insulin level that would kill an adult, but the baby was fine within a very short time and went home. There was no point or no possibility to repeat the blood test because the baby's glucose had stabilized and the baby was fine. So that's what Dr. ZA, that's her role in this. Just as a bit of a, well, it's all to do with it, but why are all these doctors anonymous? They're not going to be anonymous to hinder the framing that's happened of an innocent nurse, Lucy Letby. They're not going to do that to hinder it. They're going to do it to help it. They're going to make them anonymous and agree that they can be anonymous and ensure that they're anonymous to help this miscarriage of justice, which they're setting up, they're building up for years. And then it all goes through and they get the right judge, possibly the right defense, in order to ensure they get the right result. Everything now, I'm talking about the whole of the system, the establishment, not just that hospital, not just Cheshire Police. They want to see it through. They want a particular result and they get that result. And they flood the jury with all these cases and 8 or 9 experts, and none for the defence, although there is one there, but they don't call him. So to Dr. ZA, without Dr. ZA, would there be any smoking gun? Prior to hearing about Dr. ZA's existence, going right back to 2023 in the summer, never heard about her. I mean, maybe someone else has. Maybe someone else remembers her testimony under the sobriquet or the initials Dr. Zed in the trial in 2023. She was nothing to do with the 2024 retrial, was she? Did she appear in any way whatsoever in the 2023 trial? Did she? Dr. Zed under that name? I'm being careful here because it's leading to something, and it's leading to what my correspondent, the connection that she made, which it saddened me, it's disappointed me if it is the case, and I think there's a strong likelihood. Got to be careful what I'm saying here, and I suggest we've all got to be careful in the comments. That's all I'm saying. I'll try to find a way to move forward with this video and what I'm saying, and what my correspondent was saying, who is anonymous, for good reason here. But what are the reasons for the other anonymity? What's Dr. A's reason? Apparently it was anxiety, some mix of that, or he's married and he's anxious. So just hypothetically now, thinking of another doctor, a story I'm making up here, about a much older doctor, really trying to push for some liaison, some kind of relationship with a considerably younger nurse, and this older doctor, obviously in a much senior position, is married and perhaps has children. In a different story, I mean, nothing to do with this case, And this hypothetical doctor goes on to, well, his career has a bit of an uplift, and he ends up doing really, really well, and he's moving up the ladder. Despite him having this anxiety problem, put it that way. He's got this anxiety problem, but he's moving up the ladder. My computer's just given me a weird message. I hate Microsoft. I hate it. Anyway, this Dr. A is going up the ladder, but he's anxious still. So if he was called to... Did I give his name away there? I didn't, did I? This hypothetical doctor is so anxious that nobody must know who he is, albeit the Court of Appeal. Sorry, I'm moving it back into reality now. Let's forget that. You know what I'm talking about. Dr. A. But no, we're back to reality now. But obviously Dr. A was very, very anxious, so nobody could know who he is. Anyway, let's park Dr. A. So that's a reason there's anxiety. It's also because they span a yarn in order to try to bring up some absurd motive, because they didn't have any motive for any of the quote-unquote murders or quote-unquote attacks. So it's about some kind of vague Munchausen's by proxy in order to get Dr. A's attention and to work with him under a high-stress situation and a kind of a bonding thing like that, to get him there and to do that. That fell away so quickly, but they tried it. They did do it. They floated it out there in the trial. It's never really stuck. It hasn't stuck in the public consciousness or in any reporting since that trial at all. That idea of that motive, because it sounds stupid. It's rubbish, and there's no basis for it. There's no basis for it at all. But because of the role he played there, they wanted to protect him. The police wanted to protect him. The CPS wanted to protect him. It was better for the fit-up. It was better for the framing of an innocent person. It was better for this massive, very sinister fraud to make sure that Dr. A is protected and his little anxiety problem is protected. But it's not really about his anxiety. It's not about his anxiety. It's because he needs to be looked after so he can play his role in the fit-up here, and someone that was once close but now is distant and can be used an interesting tool for the prosecution, and even try to float in this desperate, ridiculous idea of a Munchausen's by proxy motive, which just dissipates and has dissipated completely. It's just gone. It's absurd. Always was, always will be. Okay, so that's one anonymous person. Who else is anonymous? Dr. B. Dr. B in the trial, who becomes Dr. V. So Dr. A became U in Thirlwall. Dr. B becomes Dr. V. Anyway, I'll call her Dr. B. What's the motive? Is the motive to protect her because she's having a difficult time, or is the real motive for the purposes of the fit up, for the purposes of getting all your ducks in the row and making sure that the right people are protected in the right way, so it's not embarrassing, so information doesn't come out in the trial too explicitly that jurors or other people or the media might have seen, stuff that's come out in the interim, in the reporting about who Dr. B is. What I mean by that is who she is in terms of what she did, what she is responsible for, which is the death of baby Noah, alongside the doctor that she was supervising in 2014. Right, so there we are. So the reason Dr. B, who becomes V at Thirlwall, is given anonymity because it don't look good before the jury. It doesn't look good in the court. As the headline said, one of the accusers, one of the main accusers, the Gang of Four, a subset of the Gang of Seven, a Gang of Four member, the principal member, is responsible for one of the main accusers is responsible for the death of a baby in 2014. It doesn't look good before the court. That's why they didn't want the jury to hear it, didn't want the media to hear it, didn't want anybody to hear it, didn't want the public to hear it. That's why that anonymity has been given. So then we circle back to Dr. Zed A. Funny initials. What does it mean? Has it got any connection? I don't know, but it's Dr. Zed A. She's playing quite a fulcrum role here. The discoverer or the rememberer of that test that she herself threw away and just thought, oh well, that's just rubbish. It's just a dodgy test. Look at that 4,000 figure for baby F. Well, she didn't know it was baby F then. Look at that 4,000 figure there. She saw when it came back and goes, well, the baby's home. That's ridiculous. Oh, these bloody machines, these bloody laboratory tests. Oh, it's rubbish. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to bring it to anybody's notice, except for 2 years later, when she rings up Stephen Breary, so we hear. And then we had thought that Stephen Breary was the discoverer of it, of that and the other test, baby F and L, isn't it? But baby F is the higher one even. So without Dr. Zed, would there be a smoking gun? Would there be any case at all? Look how important she is. Without her, there would be no smoking gun, probably. We had heard before, Breary was there late one night going through all the notes, and he found it. He found the blood test with a high result. It wasn't that he... See, there's another red flag. They had to tell you that story earlier on. That story earlier on was the story that was going around for over a year. And then suddenly, no, it's not that. He was told a year before and he kept it to himself. He was told by Dr. Zed. So he had it there. He's just slipped it into the drawer of doom, right at the back maybe, gathering dust or whatever, along with his Werther's originals back there in the drawer of doom. But if it was so important, why did he hang on to it for a year before he even, why all these other cases are being manufactured out of nothing because they've got this nutter Evans to do it for them. And they know Evans and Evans knows them. And Evans is there batting for them. Without Dr. A, would there be a case? Without Dr. Zed, would there be a case? Sorry, there's so many initials. Without Dr. Zed, would there be a case at all? Because she's the one that came up with the goods when she remembered that test result. Would Breary have found it independently, going through the notes late one night when he's staying there, looking for a smoking gun, looking for smoke? You can smell smoke. There's some smoke out there. So back to Dr. Zed. I'm going to leave Dr. Zed a minute. And this is the tricky part. And this is the bit that I found very upsetting in a way, or disappointing. I've said in a number of, I keep going back to this refrain. One of the refrains, one of the motifs I keep coming back to is, gosh, there was one consultant there. There was one consultant there among all these bastards who was honest about what was going on in that unit. And she wrote an email to Tony Chambers in December 2015 saying to Tony Chambers, just to recapitulate it, I've said it probably in about 30 videos, to keep bringing it back in. There was somebody there. There was a decent person, an honourable person that could see what was going on. In 2015, this other consultant wrote, I'm not actually going to mention her name, but I think you know who I'm talking about because I mentioned it so many times. In 2015, she wrote an email to Tony Chambers saying that the unit's unsafe. And she made this prediction. She said, children are going to die, babies are going to die. And nobody's listening to us. Nobody's listening to us. Children are going to die. And also other staff members are going to have breakdowns because we're overwhelmed. We can't, it's unsafe. The unit is unsafe. We can't manage. She was giving a realistic, this doctor, this honourable one. So I thought, and it may still be the case, but this is just to see what you think. And this has come from my correspondent today about this, which it shocked me. But I can't say what it is exactly. But I'll just. Okay, let's leave that honourable doctor there that actually told the truth about what was going on in that unit. Let's leave that doctor there for a minute. Let's go back to Dr. Zed. Let's go back to Dr. Zed, and she appears at Thirlwall under Dr. Zed. And as my correspondent noted to me, and I hadn't gone through all that in that detail, so. She said, oh, well, Dr. Zed actually, Dr. Zed was asked about. Dr. Zed was asked about an email she wrote to Tony Chambers. Dr. Zed was asked by Nicholas Lapoa, whatever his name is, the KC at Thirlwall. He's asked about writing an email to Tony Chambers at the time, Doesn't actually give the exact date, not as far as I can see so far. Got to read all through it, all the evidence she gave. Yeah, she did that. Dr. Zed did it. Dr. Zed sent that email to Tony Chambers. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? That's interesting. Let's leave Dr. Zed for a minute. Let's leave Dr. Zed and let's go back to the honourable doctor, or the one that I thought. Well, the one that I'd said many times, oh God, what about that email that this doctor really seemed to get it? She knew what was going on there. And in 2015, this honourable doctor sent an email to Tony Chambers saying that the unit was unsafe. Children were going to die. Staff were going to have breakdowns. Nobody's listening. We can't cope. Nobody's listening. Children are going to die. It's an unsafe unit. And when I've mentioned that in videos many times, I've always sort of bemoaned the fact, or I thought, well, how weird that that honourable doctor, or that one who had actually told the truth about what was going on in that unit, very, very clearly, more than anyone else had to the management, the threat and the danger and the premonition of deaths of babies. Why wouldn't that doctor be called at the trial? That doctor. Why wouldn't they be called to the trial to give evidence so that, and certainly by the defence as well, to say, look, we've seen this email you sent to Chambers in 2015, in December 2015. Doctor that that really doesn't seem to be part of anything else, apparently, any other sort of gang of anything, apparently. We've seen that email, so the defence can make a lot of that and say, look, jury, look how it actually was, according to a consultant that was there, in opposition to what all the other consultants are saying. Look how it actually was. You've got a consultant there saying that children are going to die, not because of a killer, but because it was in a state of they just couldn't cope, and it was an unsafe unit. And then this doctor that did that email in 2015, Thirlwall hasn't called them either. Thirlwall, and we know their name, we do know their name, yeah. But Thirlwall hasn't called them. Thirlwall hasn't called that doctor. Doesn't want to know either. Conspicuous by her absence at the trial and at Thirlwall. Massively conspicuous. Surely Thirlwall would want to hear from this doctor whose name we know. But no, doesn't seem to want to. But Thirlwall does want to hear from a doctor going by the initials or the anonymous sort of tag. Does want to speak to Dr Zed though. And it just so happens that Dr Zed sent an email to Chambers, and Nicholas de la Poa, if that's his name, asks her about it in Thirlwall, and she acknowledges that she did send that letter saying, talking about understaffing. It just makes you wonder how many emails were sent by how many doctors to Tony Chambers about that issue. Was it at least 2? Or was it less than 2? Anyway, and here's another thing about anonymity. Well, this is even more tricky to talk about. The honourable doctor that we thought was the person who was, I thought of her as honourable. And I thought, well, why is nobody calling her at Thirlwall or in the trial? And we know her name. Yeah, we know her name. Where's that doctor conspicuous by their absence? Well, that name crops up in 2020. In an article about the death of Ollie Stopforth, where the hospital and a team of doctors, not just one being responsible, but the whole team, failed to see signs of sepsis. And that led to the death of poor Ollie Stopforth. And it just so happens that the name that we know of the honourable doctor that we thought, who had sent that email in 2015, a very specific one that we know the contents of, about the unit being unsafe and children are going to die. That honourable doctor, in quotes, I'm not saying she definitely isn't, but let's have a little think about it, that honourable doctor appears in the article about Ollie Stopforth as one of the members of the team who failed to recognise the signs of sepsis or failed to do the proper go through all the things that they should have done in order to ensure that sepsis was ruled out. You can look at the article yourself. It's another very tragic case, but there was failings there. There were failings there which led to the death of a young child, Ollie Stopforth, just as there were terrible failings that led to the death of a young child in 2014, baby Noah, and the doctor responsible for that was given anonymity. So maybe a doctor that was involved with failing to spot the signs of sepsis in the case of Ollie Stopforth, maybe a doctor there was also, it was deemed necessary to anonymise them, maybe, And then maybe that was a way that you could get them to Thirlwall and perhaps to the trial. You know what I mean? They might have anonymised that doctor as well, because that wouldn't have been a good look either for the jury. And that might have been made much of by the defence. And maybe the defence did know and just couldn't be bothered to do anything about it. Maybe they weren't allowed to. Maybe there was some kind of trick where they were said, oh, you can't expose this to the jury. Like it don't matter. So you've got potentially, obviously they didn't know about Breary and Baby O, did they, at that point? Or did they? I mean, I'm assuming some of the other doctors did know, and certainly Breary knew. But that's another whole terrible issue. So there we are. So you've got these. You can imagine why I've had to be circumlocutory, I think the word is, and I suggest everyone is in the comments as well. But it's not 100%, and this is all from my correspondent. It's not something that I've arrived at today. It's wholly from, but it goes to the notion of why is anonymity required? There are also, I think, at least 3 nurses that are anonymous as well. Why? Why would that be? There's probably a story there for each of those as well. There's a story there. So we've got a story about anonymity and a reason, not for a made-up reason about anxiety, but for purposes of the construction, of the framing and of the setup with regard to Dr. A, with regard to Dr. B, and with regard to, well, in all likelihood, with regard to Dr. Zed as well, who actually allegedly is the fulcrum actor that then produces out of, while on maternity leave, it just enters her mind like a flash of inspiration that 2 years ago, she saw a blood test result that at the time meant nothing to her, no worries at all. Didn't go to anyone and said, oh, even though the baby has left now the hospital and is fine as far as we know, somebody's obviously tried to poison this baby with insulin. We need to investigate this right now. No, it just went in the waste paper basket, or it was filed or whatever. It meant nothing. And that thing that meant nothing, and so easily was cast aside, becomes to be regarded as absolutely infallible by everybody once it enters the scene as the smoking gun. What was thrown away, not disregarded, nobody followed it up, nobody cared enough to follow it up. Because there's still an issue there, isn't there? Whether the baby's gone home or not, it doesn't matter. There's still an issue there, and unless you're used to thinking, oh God, yeah, just a dodgy result, contaminated, dodgy machine, bloody laboratory, messed it up again, the way they stored the sample, the way they took the sample, where they took the sample from, did they keep it at the right temperature? The machines are all gone to pot. It's so easy to imagine that. Although all those things maybe flooded through her mind very, very quickly. Dr. Zed now, back in 2015, 2 years later, it becomes an infallible piece of information, or later deemed infallible, that becomes that, alongside similar test for baby L, becomes the thing that they actually need, and without that they wouldn't have probably brought a case at all. They had to have something else. As Evans said in one of his post-trial interviews, now we could finally have something, now we could prove it, or something like that. It's bizarre. Not that they could anyway, because for all the reasons people are talking about with regard to the test, but also what I was talking about with the idea of when then, if you are going to go on with a hypothesis of someone spiking those TPN bags, you're not able to say when it happened. So back to the motive means opportunity, no motive. And just to reiterate what I was saying in that video about that, the missing when vis-a-vis those TPN bags and insulin. yes, it's possible an individual who was blamed could have had means and opportunity, but no more than a whole host of other people across a period of time. We don't know how long that period of time is. Could be a few days, could be a week, could be 10 days. How long? In other words, there was zero reason to determine that Lucy, going with a hypothesis that they were spiked, and I don't believe they were anyway. Going with their hypothesis, there's no more reason to determine that Lucy Letby did it merely because she hung one or two of them up, because another nurse hung one of them up as well, and another nurse chose one out of 6, almost as though she knew what she was looking for, and playing into their mindset. There's no more evidence at all that Lucy Letby, going with the hypothesis that insulin was added to those TPM bags, did that than Jayaram did it, or Breary did it, or Gibbs did it, or Dr. B did it, or any other nurse there, or any registrar there across a period of time, a recent period of time. But what is a recent period of time? What is a recent period of time? It could be quite a considerable period of time. I don't know how many. Have they got a main fridge with so they've got this kind of smaller fridge with like 6 in there, and they've got a bigger fridge elsewhere where they have to sign it out? Is that what it is? The dextrose bags, I mean, and then it's in an area where there's insulin there, and then is that where you do it, in that larger unit, and then there is a unit sort of closer by? I don't know what the logistics of that are, but nonetheless, it's all about the when. As I went on ad infinitum about. But anyway, the point of this video was really about what the emails that I was sent. And it just feeds into the idea of it's another massive potential. I think there's a very strong likelihood of what the correspondent said is likely to be the case, or believes is the case, and I think there is a very strong likelihood, and another reason why anonymity is given. But the shocker is that this is a tricky bit. Dr. Zed is one of the signatories of the apology letter. She's one of the 7 people asked to sign an apology letter. And thanks again to my correspondent for sending me a copy of that letter. She's one of them, Dr. Zed is. So, how do I put this? Going back to the Honourable Doctor, in quotes, well, the Honourable Doctor said in 2015, in December, it's an unsafe unit, children are going to die, babies are going to die, staff are going to have breakdowns, we're drowning, we're overwhelmed here, nobody's listening to us, it's unsafe. Unequivocal. Would you then expect that person to take a view that, knowing that and having written that, could a person like that do a 180 and kind of forget that she'd written all that? And get on board with a different story quite a bit down the line once she realises all her colleagues are going with that story and she doesn't want to be an outlier anymore, because she's an outlier there, isn't she? She's an outlier when she writes that in December 2015. Once the police are involved, I should stop there, but I'll stop there. But it's a choker, and it's a shocker that if it is the case, and I don't think I've mentioned any names, no. So that's all right, isn't it? I haven't mentioned any names, but it's a shocker. But what it also is, it tells you about motivation to give anonymity, not for the individual, but for the construction of the framing, the construction of the determination to absolutely nail an innocent person. And you've got to make sure you're protecting certain individuals and protecting certain lots of information that the jury mustn't hear, media mustn't hear, public mustn't hear about. We mustn't hear about doctors who accuse. J'accuse. Doctors who accuse being responsible for the deaths of babies. We mustn't hear about that. That muddies the water because we've got to have these honourable doctors fighting and wanting to be whistleblowers and struggling against intransigent management. And then we've got to have the serial killer, and they're trying to bring her down, but they just can't do it because they can't lift the phone and they can't actually do it, and they've got to, but it's etched on in their nightmares, or it's deep in a drawer of doom that they've lost the key for and they can't find it. They're getting sucked into the drawer of doom, or it's etched into their nightmares, but they can't speak because they don't know how to do it. We weren't trained to do it, one of them says. We didn't know what we should do. We didn't know what we should do. We didn't have that kind of training to know what we should do when we saw things virtually happening. We saw crimes virtually taking place, or we found people virtually red-handed, and we didn't know what to do, so we'd have to think about it for 13 months. We'd have to think about it. And then if there was one doctor that was decent at the time and wanted to give a message up the chain to management to say, oh God, talking about what had happened that over 2015, and then having a premonition of what was going to happen in 2016. And then you've got Dr. Saladi talking about, another doctor there, Dr. Saladi, talking about Pseudomonas, and other doctors there, fully aware that Pseudomonas is there. That's another can of worms, isn't it, really? Because Evans says to John Sweeney, well, I don't think anybody knew about the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Well, a whole bunch of people did know, didn't they? All the consultants knew. All the consultants knew. But the police, well, they were hoping it was a bad bug in the water, although they didn't investigate anything to do with that, or didn't allow anybody else to investigate anything to do with that. Or did they know and they just deliberately kept it out of it? Or did the doctors keep it all to themselves about the Pseudomonas aeruginosa? And some of the letters being written, like by Dr. Saladi about it. They all knew. So, but Evans, it's sequestered away from Evans. Evans mustn't know about that. Did he know about it? Why didn't he want to know about it? Why didn't he want to know about all these signs of sepsis and where it might have come from? Evans says to John Sweeney, had it been discovered in the unit that he worked in when he was in Wales, before he retired, well, they would have shut it all down, closed it all down, made sure that it was completely off there. You would not taking any more babies, has to be shut down, the whole unit. But it didn't get shut down. But the doctors all knew it was there, and they didn't shut it down, and they didn't tell the management they got to shut it down. And Evans's answer to Sweeney, when Sweeney goes, well, why wasn't it shut down then at COCH? Do you know who Evans blames? The management. Well, perhaps they are partly to blame. But who else is to blame? It's the consultants themselves that know it. It's the consultants themselves that know that's the case. And did NHS, COCH, that trust, deliberately withhold that information from the police, deliberately withhold it from Evans? I don't want to say withhold it from Evans, because Evans wouldn't have wanted to even consider it even. I don't believe him when he says he doesn't know about it. It didn't ring true when he says, oh, I don't think anybody knew about that, to be honest. Something like that. I don't think anybody knew it. This is to John Sweeney. Oh, I don't think anybody knew about it. The Pseudomonas. Well, he's lying, isn't he? He knows that lots of people knew about it. All his muckers, all his mates, all the mates that he was batting for and working for, against and using the scapegoat to protect them, and to protect them against the management as well. Brewery, Gibbs, Jayaram, Dr. B, Dr. VA, whoever that is. And we've got potentially, well, I will stop there before I mess it up. Anyway, I'll leave it there, but it's just I know this has been a bit of a ramble, but I had to go around the houses a bit, really. Hopefully they won't come for me. But why would they? Because I haven't done anything wrong. Anyway, but it's very sinister. 1,000 rabbit holes. It's like a rabbit warren, 1,000 holes. More sinister than you can possibly imagine, all of this. Very sinister group of people. what I was saying the other day in a video about, it's just totally about self-protection over principle, over truth, over honor. There is no honor here. There's no honor. Is that saying about there's no honor among thieves? There's no honor among consultants from them individually, or I'm not saying all of them across the whole world, of course I'm not, but this group, there's no honor among them. Obviously there's not, right up to the point that Brewery knows that he's responsible for the death of baby O. And Mark McDonald's press conference, that's the kind of shock look on Dr. Taylor's face. He's feeling it. He knows. We said, well, if that was me, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Is Brewery sleeping like a baby? Is he sleeping like a top? Or is he having nightmares like his mate Jayaram, with all that stuff etched on his mind? He'll never be able to sleep again. You know. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and thank you very much. Take care. It's got to come to an end. This, they know, the system knows. The system knows what it's done, and it knows that it's not going to get away with it. It's just, how long is it going to hold on for? What disgusting attempts will it make? You know, what's happening with that hiring of more detective constables for Hummingbird? What is that but an act of desperation, or perhaps just using up a budget or something like that? Maybe it's just something and nothing. Maybe they're not actually doing anything else because they know they haven't got anything else to bring. They won't bring a single thing else. They can see all the cases that took them years and years to construct and lie about, falling apart one after the other. Are they really going to go back to the Liverpool Women's Hospital and look at extubations? Look at extubations back when Lucy Letby was a trainee nurse? No, they're not going to do it. They're just floating out they were floating out the idea, oh, we could do it. Evans allegedly sent 25 quote unquote extra cases of suspected deliberate harm to the police after the first arrest of Lucy Letby. So, i.e. that means before the second arrest. So tail end of 2018 or early months of 2019, 25 cases. Same number, 25, crops up again, that he sends another 25. Why is it 25? It's odd when that kind of thing happens. That's the report. That's what we hear. 25 cases in 2023 this time to the police. That's a potential total of 50. Well, it's a total of 50, not a potential total. If we're to believe what he's saying, this is what Evans has told people. That's what he's done. 50 further cases of suspected deliberate harm, gone nowhere. The first 25 back from, say probably tail end of 2018. So how long ago is that? 5-6 years ago. Police can't do anything with them, or don't want to do anything with them. Whatever the reason is. And then 2023, there's nothing been added either from that lot of 25. Is it the same lot of 25 and he's just telling a different story to different journalists? One to Rachel Aviv on the New Yorker and the other one to, I think probably Sarah Napton stroke Dr. Philip Hammond. Certainly Dr. Philip Hammond, he told that he sent another 25 to the police after he'd let her look at all his reports and files all over again. He sent another 25 in 2023. So it's hideous, isn't it? All of it. It's hideous. And this anonymity business, it's hiding a multitude of sins, literally and figuratively, a multitude of sins. Might be interesting to start to look at, well, I don't know how far you could get with the anonymous nurses, what and why they're anonymous. You can bet every giving of anonymity is for the prosecution, is for the police's quote unquote investigation, it's for the case, it's for building the entrapment, it's for the purposes of not upsetting anything, not getting anything in the way of the achieving of the witch finding and then the witch destroying. That's the purpose of anonymity. And they'll lie about, of course, they've lied about the reasons for it. It's all for them. It's all for the fraud of it. But I'm just repeating myself now. Thank you very much if you've listened to this. And I think I need a drink of something. Anyway, take care and God bless. All the best. Bye-bye.